And it's just a huge honor for me to be podcast interviewing Kirk Blanchard all the way from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. I feel like you're my brother, Kirk. I mean, after 7,000 posts on Dental Town since 2004, I think I might know as much about you as your own brother or sister. It's just amazing. Kirk graduated from dental school in 1997 and began working in private practice, gaining experience in practices from solo operator to large group practice. In 2005, he earned a certificate of orofacial pain from the University of Medicine and Dentistry in New Jersey and began tailoring his general dental practice to facial pain and sleep. From 2011 to 2015, Kirk served as assistant professor at Dalhousie University's Faculty of Dentistry, including 1 year as interim director of Dental Anatomy and Occlusion. In 2014, Kirk decided to pursue business education and attended Royal Roads University for a certificate of executive coaching. He now divides his time between private dental practice and his executive coaching career. He's a husband and father of a 5-year-old daughter. My granddaughter's almost 5. He spends his spare time playing drums in a garage band with various artists, pursuits, painting, sketching, and making stuff. Man, Kirk, thanks so much for being on my show today.
Thanks, Howard.
Now, can I ask one politically incorrect question?
That's the name of the show.
You left Dalhousie in 2015. Isn't that the year they had the big international scandal?
I left the year before.
Oh, so you got out early?
I know the students. I wasn't there when it happened.
So was that what was your summary of that? Just stupid boys being dumb, or was it bad, predatory?
Yeah, it wasn't as bad. There were some things that weren't very proper, but it wasn't nearly as bad as the media wanted everyone to think.
Did those kids ever get to graduate from dental school?
They did.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they all graduated.
Yeah, well, being a man for 54 years and raising 4 boys, I can guarantee you that all 5 of us Farran boys have all done very stupid things. It's amazing how you can get into trouble. But so how is it executive coaching? So I want to start with this. You're on Dental Town all day long, and it's about 81% U.S. dentist. When you're an executive business coach, is business of dentistry in Canada very different than the United States?
Parts are the same and parts are different. Yeah, for example, one area that's very, very different, for example, is how hygiene gets billed. It still baffles me the way that American dentists talk about hygiene billings. So that part is very different. Because of the size of Canada, being so much population-wise so much smaller than the States, we tend to see trends happen years afterwards. So we are just seeing corporate dentistry start. So however long ago that was that corporate dentistry started to crop up in the States, now we're just seeing it. So there's a bit of a lag time before things will happen here.
Go back to the hygiene billing. What's the main difference in hygiene billing between the United States and Canada?
In our hygiene, we just go by the specific thing. It's exactly like a dental code. So we don't have what we would call a prophy or a perio. When you hold a scaler, that's called scaling. If you have a rubber cup polisher, that's called a prophy. So someone may have a scale, polish, and a fluoride, and that would be their treatment plan. Or 2 units of scale, half an hour of scale, a polish, and a fluoride. There's no distinction based on disease state, except some people take longer, some people take less. And we don't have to decide or pre-authorize ahead of time by a diagnostic code. If you come in and you're overdue for your hygiene appointment, it might take 15 minutes longer to scale, and you'll be billed for 45 minutes of scale, a polish, and a fluoride.
So which system do you think's better, more efficient?
Is it more efficient?
No, which system do you like better? Do you like the Canadian system better than the American system on that?
I do. The reason I like it, it seems to give the clinic more control. You know, at any given time, it's the discussion between the dentist or the hygienist and their patient. You have more buildup today, this will take a little bit longer. And that's the extent.
And what tooth numbering system are you using?
We use the universal. What do you guys call it?
Yeah. Americans call everything. If it comes in America, it's universal, even though we may be like only 5% of the dentists on the world that use the universal.
Right.
Everybody else uses the FDI.
The eye, yeah. Four
Yep.
quadrants, 8 teeth in each quadrant, numbered
Right.
from the front back.
Yeah, Americans have the World Series when there's only United States and Canada watch it. It's so funny when we're having the World Series and you're lecturing overseas and nobody even knows what you're talking about. They might have never seen a baseball game in their life. Soccer is the biggest sport, and not baseball. But yeah, the universal numbering system, it's just a U.S. Canada, but everyone else does the Federation Dentists International.
Yeah, well, we do the FDI. We do the Federation.
Okay, so you use the FDI.
I misspoke and said universal, thinking that meant everyone.
Right, right. Americans are number one in optimism and self-esteem. So if we do it, it's the world, it's the universe, it's the intergalactical system. I also want to ask, because it's so emotional right now in the United States, Obamacare, the Affordable Health Care Act, said that children under 12, their medical insurance has to cover dental. Isn't that the way it's always been in Canada for decades?
It's province specific.
Oh, is it?
You know, if you're in a particular province, you have a provincial guideline that sets that out. And you cross the border, it's going to be different. So it depends on where you live.
And what is the average age of children covered? I mean, Obamacare was 12 and under. What's the provinces generally?
It bounces. During my time working, it's been 10 and under. It's been 12 and under. I think now it's 15 and under.
So it's getting older and older?
Yeah.
And is that a good thing for the dentists in Canada? I mean, do they like the fact that children under 10, 12, or 15 is covered dental by medical, or do they just not like it?
No, it's actually in Nova Scotia right now, it's highly contentious because the government also sets the fee, and they set the fee below overhead. So it actually costs a dentist money to treat a child in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, and that's where the government is just flat out wrong. I mean, it's one thing to subsidize something, like if the government says, okay, we Medicare, Medicaid, we'll pay for a knee, but we're only paying 40 grand. And if you want to find a doctor that's you're all good, probably half the doctors in America, that's all good. But when they tell the other half they can't charge over 40, then you're going into General Motors that has 5 distinct price points of a Chevy, a Pontiac, an Olds, a Buick, and Cadillac, and you just say there will never be a Cadillac or a Buick or an Olds, and everybody has to drive a Chevy. And that's where the government is just arrogant and asshole. They should subsidize. So, and if you set the fee like they do in California, where only 10% of the dentists would accept it, then it's your choice to, well, why don't you, if you raise it to this price, maybe you get 20. You raise it to this price, you'll get 50. And at this price, Delta Dental is getting 96% of the dentists. So if you want 96% of the dentists to take it, here's the fee.
Right.
But they're kind of controlling and abusive. Just one more political question before you go into your dentist coaching. The 20 most advanced countries that I've ever lectured in, they all have a single payer system like Canada. Mm-hmm. But it's the dentists on Dental Town are very, very excitable about that deal. Even though their own grandparents, everyone over 65, has universal health care, Medicare, and all the Americans love it. And I have lectured in Canada at least, 10, 20 times over the last, since 1990. And all the dentists there tell me that the citizens of Canada love their national health insurance. What's your view on that? Do they or do they not?
They do. Yes, I would never live without it. The problem that happens with a single payer, because people talk about wait times all the time, right? If you have some problem in Canada versus you have a problem in the United States, how much faster can you get in to get an MRI or whatever it is? We've become very good at triage. So, when you have a certain budget, you only have a certain amount to spend, and you have a certain amount of sick people, you get pretty good at making sure the sickest get care first. There are some problems, of course. It does slow things down. We don't take nearly, if you look at the amount of treatment done, it's not nearly the same in Canada as it is in the States. It's capped by budget.
So which systems do you think better? The American healthcare system, which will pass $3 trillion this year and
Right.
still has tens of millions uninsured, or the Canadian system?
If I only have two choices, I say the Canadian system.
I know, and that's where it's going. And when you say that to doctors, they go insane.
By having it our way. I mean, one of the things I've seen when I travel to the States, billboards advertising for hospitals. So the thought that if I go in with a broken arm, a percentage of that fee that I pay to get that fixed goes to marketing so that the next broken arm shows up in that hospital, that's bizarre to me.
And the other thing that is bizarre to Americans is, traveling in, I've lectured in 50 dental countries, and all people are exactly the same. They all have the same unmet needs and wants and desires. And I love seeing the diversity of any little things like a toilet, a door, a window, of course, the food, the language, the music, all that kind of stuff like that. But the 20 richest countries all figured out that single payer was the most efficient system. I mean, we're talking, and I mean, look at these lists of countries. I mean, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England, Germany, France. I mean, it's the who's who of who makes all the stuff in your house. These aren't third world countries.
Right.
I don't care what you say about certain countries, but I just say, well, if there's nothing in Walmart made from your country, I mean, why am I following your lead? But every country that makes something that I bought with my own money figured out that single payer was the most efficient system. And like say, America already has it for everyone over 65, and all these people that badmouth the single payer system. You say, oh, well, your mom and dad, are they going to give up their Medicare? Oh, hell no, they love it. Okay. So it just makes no sense. It's just, Sapien is a strange beast. So you got into coaching. Why did, well, first of all, let's go back to facial pain and sleep. You went back and earned a certificate of oral facial pain from the University of Medicine Dentistry in New Jersey and began tailoring your practice for facial pain and sleep. What made you interested in oral facial pain?
Long and short of it, my own facial pain and tinkering with my own bite plates until I found something that gave me relief. And I just started to look at it.
Did you notice that your oral facial pain started the minute you got married and had a 5-year-old daughter?
Yeah. No, it was before. I've had disc problems since high school.
Okay, so you can't blame it on your wife and daughter.
No, can't blame it on them.
Okay. So you had oral facial pain yourself?
Yep.
And that's what you got interested in. So tell us your journey about that.
Oh, it was a dental town journey, actually. It's kind of funny. Tip of the hat to Mike Melkers on this one.
Right on.
Mike sort of made a bet with me. He needed it was actually some computer work done for a course of his. And I said, no, I don't have time. I don't know how to do it. And he egged me on, and he said, I'll give you a bag of NTIs if you do this for me. So I said, all right, sounds fair. I've been reading about it on Dental Town. I've been following Jim Boyd's posts. You got a deal, Mike. I figured it out. I figured out how to do it. And it was actually at the Townie meeting. I think it was the second annual Townie meeting.
That's when we met.
What's that?
That's when we met, right?
Yeah. And Mike hands me a bag of NTIs and says, do you know how to use these? I said, I've never done it before. He rolls his eyes at me and says, well, I have a responsibility to make sure that you know how to do this. He opens up his laptop in his hotel room and gives me the quick notes version of his lecture and says, now go off and please don't hurt anyone. So Jim Boyd was actually presenting at that same Townie meeting. I went to his booth, grabbed all the information he had, read everything Mike gave me, read everything Jim gave me, and decided, and I read this all on the way home. So from Vegas to Halifax, it's a long flight. Soaked it in as much as possible, and as soon as I get into the office on Monday, I tried to make one for myself. When I started to notice results, I thought, okay, now I'm going to learn more. And that was the starting point of how I got into orofacial pain.
So explain what Jim Boyd and his NTI is to our audience.
If we're going to class it, it's an anterior midpoint stop appliance. So you're removing contact from the posteriors. Some people call it full-time anterior guidance.
You called it anterior mid-stop.
Midpoint stop, yeah.
And how is the success of NTI today? I got to be honest with you. When you go into oral facial pain, I don't want to repeat myself too many times, but if I sit at a table with 10 endodontists or 10 pediatric dentists or 10 orthodontists doing Invisalign, there's not much disagreements.
Exactly.
But when you go into TMJ and oral facial pain and all that, all hell breaks loose. There are so many. It's like religion. It's exactly like religion.
Yeah, and the real reason for that, Howard, is the way the pain system works. Everything else we know. So if you have endo, if you have pulpitis, or you have an abscess, you've got a distinct localized cause. And the dental approach, the surgical approach, fix the distinct localized cause and the problem goes away. With chronic pain, it tends to be going on up here a little bit more. We're looking at peripheral sensitization, central sensitization. It's the way that neuroplastic, the brain and the entire nervous system functions. So things get a little out of whack and the whole pain perception goes off. If you think back to what you know about your central painkillers, your narcotics and opiates, and how they work by activating the descending pain system. So it sends information from the brain down to the site to help shut the pain off. When we get into that type of stuff, there's no rules. And now with the way a placebo can work, the way both of those peripheral and central feedback mechanisms can work, you can make improvements by doing something that isn't necessarily tied to the direct cause. Any host of placebo-related things are very well suited for dealing with chronic pain. So we don't know. So you get these camps crop up because a lot of things work under different circumstances. And sometimes we don't know why.
So is NTI, sometimes the negatives on NTI was that if a person wears it a long time, some of the posterior molars might super erupt. What would you say to that?
That's a fallacy. What we know is if some people, when they wear any appliance, will end up with the molars hitting early and the development of an anterior open bite. But pretty much everyone inherently knows that if you take your partial denture out at night, the opposing teeth do not super erupt from not having an opposing tooth for 8 hours. It's common knowledge. You take the partial out at night, and wearing the partial at day stabilizes the occlusion so the teeth aren't shifting around. The bone just doesn't form at the apex fast enough for us to see a super eruption pattern happening. So when someone comes back and I was going to say the sevens, the second molars.
No, you can say the seven. The seven is universal. We have people listening from 150 countries, and our arrogant Americans won't even go to the metric system. We're still measuring in yards and feet. Can you believe that?
Make it easier.
And it costs the Americans a lot of money. That first Mars probe that crashed in it crashed into Mars. Right. I went to Arizona State University. That's where half of that Mars probe was made, and the other half was at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Well, guess what the Americans did? Half the team in California was doing all the programming in metric, and the Americans were using miles, and then on that re-entry, the computer program froze. And you would have thought the country could have rallied around that and said, okay, we just lost a $150 million probe. Can we just switch to metric like the rest of the entire planet and quit being the only buffoons that still measure in yards and feet? So yeah, I think the Americans should also go to the FDI system. If that's what the whole entire planet does, That's what we should do too. But Jim Boyd, when you heard him lecture at Town Meeting, I mean, so 10 years ago, I mean, he was all over all the lectures. He was the man. What's the status a decade later with Jim Boyd and NTI? How's the adoption of that going 10 years later?
Well, to be honest, I haven't been in touch with Jim a whole lot lately. I bump into him in the forums every once in a while.
That's my point. That's my point exactly. I mean, he was everywhere a decade ago. And so was NTI. I mean, it was just like the buzz, and now I don't see him or hear much, or so that's why I was asking.
The company went through some changes. It went public, and then Jim bought a portion back. If I understand, I don't know all the details, but that had something to do with it, I believe. Oh,
financial problems. So what would be so?
I don't have problems, but change.
Some change. So what would be what would be the other alternatives to an NTI? I mean, it seems to me when I'm in dental offices, the average person with orofacial pain, the average dentist takes an upper impression and makes a full arch acrylic splint.
Right.
That would be. I think that's the majority.
Yep. On my options to patients, we will discuss the anterior contact appliance, the full coverage appliance, and occasionally a repositioning appliance. So those are your three.
So I like the way you say it. So you have the anterior contact appliance, and then the second one was the
full contact.
Full arch, or what do you call it?
Yep.
So you have full arch contact, anterior contact, and then 3 was repositional?
Repositioning, yeah.
And what would the percent breakdown of patient acceptance, how would that break down? What percent would go with a anterior contact appliance like an NTI versus full arch versus repositional?
Oh, in my practice, probably 90% on anterior, 9% on flat arch, and the remaining 1 might be repositioning.
So that's what I like to talk about, Dentistry Uncensored. I mean, I don't want to talk about what everybody does. You're a unicorn. I believe 90% of the dentists out there, I mean, there's 211,000 licensed dentists in the United States. I believe 90% would do the full arch. They'd take an impression, it'd be hard acrylic, put it in, adjust it. So you're the unicorn, you reverse, you're doing 90% anterior contact. Why?
I think one of the reasons is the way I've structured my follow-up with the patients. Fully allowing them to tell me the truth. And the number of patients that can't or don't bother wearing their night guard, it's through the roof. So a lot of these patients get referred to me, and they already have a full coverage night guard. And when I ask them about it, not comfortable, didn't wear it, only wore it for the first 30 minutes of going to sleep and took it out and threw it away. So I start to look at that and say, okay, so there's obviously some problems with that. How can we address it and what we do? And one of the big things they say is it seemed to make the symptoms worse. So if class A of appliance seems to make the symptoms work, my only logical choice is to, well, sometimes if they bring it in with me, I'll tweak it, and sometimes we'll see some improvements. That's my preference. If someone walks in with an appliance that fits, my preference is to tweak the appliance that they have. If someone doesn't have an appliance or has thrown it out already, or it no longer fits because it's been so long since they've worn it, then we're going to just interview them, investigate what is it that you didn't like, what is it that didn't work. And if it seemed to make the symptoms worse comes up, there's a good chance I'm going to do an alternate type of appliance.
And would that still be an NTI?
Yeah, well, I get the lab fabricated version. With the NTI, they're labor intensive chairside. To do it right, it was taking a long time. It's a lot easier to have my assistant snap an impression and deliver it a week later when the lab returns.
And what type of impression are you taking?
I like the alginate replacement.
Alginate replacement?
Alginate replacement, yeah.
By whom?
I think this one is called Silginate.
And do you Silginate? And when? How soon do you have to pour that up? I mean, are you sending the lab the impression, or do you have to pour it up?
The impression, yeah.
Silginate.
Yeah.
And how long does that? Can you find that, Ryan? Silginate?
It would last for weeks. It's a polyvinyl siloxane
Oh,
base, but it doesn't have the exact qualities. So it's less expensive than a crown and bridge polyvinyl.
okay. So it's still a PVS.
It's a PVS ultimately.
And you know what? You can't that alginate. In Japan, they can do crown and bridge with it because they have such a higher quality alginate, and they
Okay.
treat it so seriously. They refrigerate it and they measure the water perfectly. And I mean, they just treat alginate like just unbelievable precious, and they swear by it for even crown and bridge.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the reasons that I often switch to the low end polyvinyl is I can't be guaranteed that my assistant can get to our lab and pour it up fast enough. So I don't trust the distortion factor. I would rather her be able to take it, spray it down with the disinfectant, and then just let it sit, and we can go on and see our next patient.
Interesting. And what lab do you send these to be made?
I have two. Both are Canadian. I either send it to Orthodent in Toronto or Orem in Calgary.
Interesting. And when you start talking about that, the dentists are all taking full arch and doing upper acrylic, etc. But what you're finding is the consumer, the patient, is not wearing it. They're not complying, and this seems like deja vu to the CPAP machine. The
Yeah.
CPAP machine was perfect because none of the doctors realized that half their patients weren't using it.
Right. And it's an interesting, sort of a trigger word there, Howard, when you said compliance. Because I don't believe that patients are non-compliant. I believe that their doctor didn't listen well enough to their needs. And if you're delivering a treatment that's not working with the patient, that treatment needs to be modified and adjusted. It's easy to blame it on the patient and call them non-compliant. It's a lot harder to listen to them and try to make the treatment suit what they actually require.
Do you call them non-compliant or deplorables?
No.
Political joke. Joke.
In mine, it wouldn't be non-compliant. It would just be that the treatment isn't suitable yet.
I have these basket of dental charts called deplorables.
Right.
Is it deplorables or undeplorables? The dental basket. That'd be funny, man. We should go to my dental office and I'll take a picture of all these charts called the basket of dental patient deplorables. No, that's just a joke. But so are you still doing orofacial pain?
Yeah, a little bit, not much. Given the political structure of codes and things like that, it's not a highly profitable part of my practice. So it's in a lot of ways it's my altruistic part of the practice. So I limit it simply because I'm much more profitable if I'm doing extractions. It's pays a lot better to take teeth out than it is to work on facial pain.
I almost feel guilty about being a dentist because that is the most fun part of dentistry. I mean, is extractions. I mean, that is just, God, that's the most fun. But you feel like, a real doctor would be saving the tooth, not removing the tooth. So I guess it's more clean fun when you're doing wisdom teeth. But there's just, man, I just love the surgery side of it the most. So then when did you get into coaching?
Coaching would have been about a year and a half ago is when I decided to do it officially. That's when I signed up with Royal Roads.
And what made you go from orofacial pain and all that stuff to this?
Well, one thing, talk about being the unicorn. I don't know if it's the unicorn or the outsider, but when I go to meetings and I hear everyone else complaining about if the HR is the part that they don't like, and they wish the staff problems didn't exist, and I find myself sitting back thinking, what's wrong with me that's the part of the day that I enjoy the most. I love talking with my staff. I love working through performance issues with them. I love getting staff motivated and getting them on board. So I started to realize that I was wired a little differently, and I was looking. From way back, I started to look at the business side I forget who it was. I think Simon Sinek is the one who says, if you don't understand people, you don't understand business. And that kind of idea struck me. And I started to look at leadership, and I started to look at people and psychology of motivation and those sort of things. And it went from a hobby to an obsession to a career shift.
And you're liking it.
Oh yeah, loving it.
Well, at the end of the day, it's just people. I mean, that's people matter. I mean, that at the end of the day, that's all it is. I mean, I've lectured in countries like Japan that have almost zero natural resources, and they're just a volcanic island on all these earthquake deals, and they have a $4 trillion economy with 140 million people, and they're just crushing it. Then you go to the next country over, and they have more natural resources than anything on Earth, and they don't have any earthquakes, and they can't get anything going. I mean, it's just managing people. You do it as a father, you do it as a sibling, you do it at work. I mean, it's just people. You nail the people stuff. Life is so easy, and if you fail the people stuff, life is so difficult.
Exactly.
So who's your client? You're talking to a lot of dentists right now.
Yep.
Talk to the person that should email you, Kirk, at drkirkblanchard.com for your executive coaching.
Yeah, the ideal client, I've got to work with someone who is a little bit motivated. It's looking at what coaching is. A lot of people, coaching means different things to different people, and for a lot of people, they'll lump it in under the consultant. And certainly not what I do is going into an office to change their systems. I'm not particularly concerned with the right way to do a certain thing. What I'm concerned with is someone who genuinely wants to make a change and genuinely wants to be a part of their own successful practice. That's my ideal customer. And my focus is, like I say, it's on the people. So teamwork and communication is a large part of my particular coaching practice.
And do you think there's a bigger market or a bigger need for dental office consulting or dental office or dentist executive coaching?
That's going to depend on the dentist. The mindset of dentists, many of them just want the formula. They just want to be told this is what to do, and some of them even want a management company to come in and do it for them. There's a huge market for that, and I think is why there's a huge market in dental consulting. That's not the way I do it. I'm more concerned with people who want to do things a little bit differently. So someone who wants that cookie cutter. Show me the best recall system. Show me the best endo booking system. They don't necessarily want an executive coach.
Well, my thoughts on the reason there's such a large practice management consulting is just go into Microsoft versus Apple. I mean, Apple makes this amazing software that's so intuitive, and people buy a MacBook Pro, and the next thing you know, they're editing videos.
Right.
And then you go to Microsoft colossal shit software, and my whole life, I mean, when they came out with Excel and PowerPoint, there was all these DVD companies and training courses, and every time you turn around, there was a whole industry of people trying to teach you how this horrible Microsoft shitty software works, and it didn't exist with Apple. And
Right.
I believe in dentistry that at the end of the day, it's that since your practice management information system does not hook into an accounting system like Quicken or Peachtree or Microsoft's Great Plains Accounting, you're basically, you have so little data, you couldn't even run a Long John Silver's or a Pizza Hut or a Kentucky Fried Chicken, let alone a dental office. These guys take all these PPOs, they don't know their costs or overhead, and it just boggles my mind that they still buy supplies from Patterson after the Eaglesoft they gave them, and buying supplies from Shine after Dentrix, And to go to a Dentrix user conference out there in Utah and listen to these guys say that 80% of the software has never been used, and they're debating over these features that, I mean, nobody, a hyena couldn't give a shit about these features, but the obvious, the financial accounting, I'm taking all these PPOs, what's my break-even point? I'm scheduling it, how long does the appointment have to be before I break even or lose money? So since the dentists don't demand it, I mean, it's kind of like politics. I mean, if when I was little, if you drank beer, you were a good boy, and if you smoked pot, you need to go to jail. Now, 30 years later, the people are seeing that that's an equivalent. So there was nothing you could have done 30 years ago to legalize marijuana, because I grew up in Kansas, so most everybody in the Catholic Church thought you should be shot if you smoked marijuana, And so the dentists, there's nothing you can do. I mean, you got 211,000 dentists, and they're too dumb to realize that they don't have their staff and their bills and their payables, and they can't even tell you. They can tell you the difference between geometry and trig, but they can't tell you the difference between managerial accounting and financial accounting. They can tell you about a statement of income, a profit and loss, but they couldn't tell you what a statement of cash flow is or a balance sheet. So I guess there's nothing I can do. I mean, I've overkilled it 1,000 times. So you're not even going to go in there, and I don't recommend you do, because even when consultants come into your office, the bottom line is consultants are reading the same reports you are. There aren't any reports. There's no picture. So most of them have a canned presentation that they sell for 50 grand that they would give to 20 different offices in 20 different states who have 20 different problems. And so so that's the status. So I think you're smart. I never got into practice management consultant. I mean, I've been asked 1,000 times. It's like, but going back to the consultants, my friends.
Right.
When I ask them, when you're in an office, what are you trying to work? And they'll almost always say, well, I feel like 90% of the time I'm an armchair psychologist. I mean, it feels like 90% of the time I'm trying to get the doctor's head on straight. I can't get him to see what's going on. And that's what you're focusing on.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's amazing. And if you get the dentist's head on straight, and then he can attract and retain a great team, then it'll all just take care of itself.
Right.
So you're trying to get you went from orofacial pain, treating crazy ladies with TMJ, to now to crazy dentists trying to get their head on straight.
You pretty much got it, Howard. That's close.
Yeah, that's why they call it Dentistry Uncensored. I'm the only one dumb enough to say the obvious. So how's that working? And again, talk to the dentist. Everyone listening to you is probably alone commuting to work. So she's driving down the highway going 65. Who should be calling you?
Well, let's look at it this way. Let's look at it from the simplest process of how you would approach something like this. And it's a three-prong approach. So the first thing I want to know is, what's your business goal? So what is it specifically that you want to achieve? And I'll usually approach that from the SMART goal system, which you're probably familiar with. Different acronyms for different things, but that's specific, measurable, agreed upon.
Specific, what was the M?
Measurable.
Measurable.
Achievable.
Can't measure it, can't manage it. The R is achievable.
Agreed upon.
Oh, A is agreed upon? Oh, SMART.
Yeah. S. Can we spell? Let's get the two of us together.
S is specific, SMART. S is specific, M is measurable, A is agreed upon.
And the R is the reasonable. So had my A and my R goals backwards. And then T is time-based. And in my experience, most dentists don't know how to do that. They don't put a time frame on when their goal will be. They don't make it specific enough. They never make it measurable. They never get agreed upon. Means all partners. So if it's in the office, that will be all the staff have got to know what the goal is together, and they all have to agree that it's a reasonable goal. And then you've got to say by when. What will I do? How will I measure it? Are we all on board? Is this really truly within our power? And by what date will this happen?
And Well, what's funny is, the industry psychology is every time the staff goes to a continuing education, they're rolling their eyes. They're saying, he's just going to get all excited and he's going to come back and he's going to start all this stuff in a week.
Right.
Nothing's going to change. It's going to be back the same way. So they're already rolling their eyes in discontent out of the chaos because they know it'll never follow through.
Right. And that's that, now we're into leadership. So the very first prong in the 3-prong is set the goal. Then you have to look at the other 2 prongs are, what does the leader have to do differently? And then what does the team have to do differently? So you got to look at yourself and say, okay, if we plan on making this goal, I have to do something. I have to take a different CE course. I have to check my stats better. I have to look at particular reports more often. I have to be a better leader and train my staff more. And that takes you over to the staff or the team portion of the triangle. So now what do they have to do differently? And it takes you back up to your goal. When you make your goal time-based, if you hit your time target, so say it was, we will do X by the end of 2016. Well, at the end of 2016, you have to reevaluate it. And you have to ask yourself, if you didn't meet your goal, what happened? What could we do differently? How do we reset the goal? When do we put our next time frame on this? Can this be corrected by the end of January 2017? Do we need the first quarter? Do we need 6 months to correct this? But if any goal was important and you don't meet the goal, you re-meet, you re-talk about it, and you reset it.
It's funny when you're 54 and you're talking to dentists at 24, and the first thing you notice in leadership and management is they have like 9 irons in the fire that they're all trying to get done by Friday.
Right.
And then you talk to anybody who's 40 and a millionaire, and they always think in years, and then they break their years down into quarters. I mean, I don't have any daily, weekly, monthly goals. I mean, I'm sitting here right now, my entire deal, it's like, I'd like to achieve these 3 things this quarter. And but they don't have to be done till the end of this year. And then you meet juggling, saying, okay, well, we're not like today we're all talking about a project on online CE, and we're like, no, we're not going to talk about this for half a year because we've already got these 3 irons in the fire that we want to do first. Do you do most all this on the phone, or do you meet in person, or being Canadian, you just go get drunk at a hockey game, or how does this work?
Yeah, hockey game work. No, most of it's done over the phone because there's not. Occasionally, I'll do a workshop. My next big engagement is actually a workshop where this specific dentist, when he called me, he said, listen, our numbers are pretty good. We're busy. I feel we're efficient enough. I'm happy where we are, but my goal is to make sure the staff stays happy. I want to retain this staff. They're working well together. I want to make sure they continue to work as a team together, and we want to do a communication and a teamwork workshop. So that particular one I will do on site. So we're starting with interviews. So I'm speaking with the staff. We're doing a personality assessment. Once we get that information together, we'll go down and the staff will actually learn how to communicate with their dentist. And he's going to learn how to communicate with them.
Do you feel confident that you can help people change their behavior?
Oh, absolutely. There is one of the things we're going to see with coaching is it does take a time commitment. Your behavior will likely not change by the end of our conversation today. You might have an idea, and the big part we're going to work on is accountability. So whether or not you promise something to me and you say, I will get back to you in 2 weeks and tell you how I'm doing with this goal, or you promise it to a partner, maybe you'll turn to Ryan and say, I'm going to do that. Let's put that in my schedule, and in 2 weeks we're going to talk and see how this was discussed. Without some form of accountability to someone, you cannot change behavior. So accountability to someone is critical.
I just think it's so darn cool that you think you can change someone's behavior. I mean, I think that's cool. I mean, really. I mean, what a feat. I mean, because you look back in your own life, like my 5 sisters are pretty much just like they were when I was a little child growing up with them. I mean, right. I have 4 boys, and they seem to be the same people they were 20 years ago. They just keep getting older. So it's so fine-tuning their behavior.
That's a better way of putting it, rather than change. You know what? And it's really interesting because in the change management perspective of anything, what we realize is people love change. People will tell you, I hate change. But what we know is people love change, but they don't like to be changed. So a huge part of any change management system is to have buy-in. So that I can't change your behavior. If you come to me and say, I think I want to be a better leader, now you've accepted the fact that you want to change, and I'm not changing you. I'm not changing your behavior. I'm giving you some pointers on leadership techniques.
You're dealing with a group of dentists. I mean, you're focused just on dentists, right?
No, actually not. The dentistry is a part of my business, but I work with people in banking. I work with people in nonprofit. I work with people in automotive. All kinds of different. It doesn't really matter. The business is the people.
I bet a lot of the dentists you work with are nonprofit. They just don't know it, thanks to Dentrix and Eaglesoft. When you're coaching a dentist, how much of this is for the dentist's personal leadership versus the dentist's management style? Where is leadership and management, is that the same? Are those two?
No, not in my mind. Management comes out of the early days of Industrial Revolution. So when you had a process, you had a factory, but the factory didn't even have robots or machines in it. It had people sitting behind the desk and stitching things up. Management is focused on the systems it takes to get people to perform. So management looks more at compliance. Dentistry, in my experience, dentists love management. So if they see a problem, they want to put a system in place, and they want to review. The more rules, the bigger the manual, the employee handbook, the happier they are. Leadership actually involves inspiration, role modeling, showing people the right way, having people follow you because they believe in you. That's the difference between leadership and management. You need both in a dental practice. There are times when leadership, often it's more of an investment and it's a slower process, but the returns are greater.
And it's confusing when you study leadership because, you know, so many people praise Steve Jobs as like the ultimate leader and visionary, and he's just God. But then when you go read the autobiography and look at the 2 movies made at him, he was a horrible husband, a horrible father, and was screaming and yelling profanities at his management team pretty routinely. I mean, do you agree or disagree?
Oh, I completely. I could not have worked for Apple in the Jobs years. It wouldn't suit me.
His own company fired him once.
Yeah.
Remember? I mean, the whole board of directors fired that guy.
Right.
You know. So how do you So I think that's confusing when you're on Facebook and you see all these leadership memes from Steve Jobs. You're like, wow, maybe you should put the meme down and go read the autobiography. So how do you reconcile somebody's massive success by being basically like a general in the middle of a war versus a dental office?
You know what? I don't know Jobs that well. What I do know is he is inspirational. So one of the arguments is that people were so inspired by his vision that they were willing to put up with all of those negatives. Like I say, I don't know. I wasn't there. Someone would have to be pretty darn inspirational to make me perform under those circumstances. So I don't know exactly how Jobs did it, but Jobs is inspirational. All personality.
Well, let me ask you another question. When you're talking to any human being, it's much easier to blame all their problems on all these exogenous external conditions and threats than
Right.
to look in the mirror.
Exactly.
And when you're dealing with dentists, they want to talk about corporate dentistry,
Yep.
PPOs, insurance cuts. They want to talk about everything they have no control over, which is why I don't like talking about politics. I don't want to talk about Putin in the Ukraine. I mean, if I spend all day Saturday researching Putin, what the hell is that going to do for my family, my office, my I don't like to waste any time on anything that's not going to change, my environment. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Right.
when you're talking with dentists, how much do you think their problems are exogenous, external, corporate, insurance, PPO versus internal when they're looking in the mirror how they're executing leadership, systems, style, management, HR?
Right. Well, I don't think it's fair to make that dichotomy of how much is external and how much is internal. But the more fair question is, which one do you have the capacity to work on? Doesn't matter if 90% of my problems are external and 10% are driven by me. I can only control those 10%. I can't control anything else. I can't control any of those other things. The only option I have is to focus on the things within my own control.
Yeah, today's the election. We're actually podcasting on the election, the
Yeah,
presidential
yeah.
election. And
Happy.
one of the things that's the most mind-blowing to me is to see all these dentists. Two things stick out in a sore thumb. All these dentists who talk about how immoral one of the candidates are in their personal life, when I know them to be like a serial cheater, adulterer, like worse than anything that these guys are accused of. Or number two, their business problems are so huge, and you're just like, it's like, how do you have all this time to be arguing over a presidential election when your dental office is damn near upside down?
There's a word for that, Howard. It's called cognitive dissonance. The mind splits it. If that connection doesn't exist.
Into what part? The morality or the or
The
the
ability to pretend that everything you do is okay and that it's not controlling some of the negative factors that surround you.
yeah.
It's a human nature. And you know what? And that's one of the things that we'll challenge with coaching. So, you ask, how do I change someone? How do I make that happen? If someone comes to me and says, the problem is the PPO, my question to that person is, what can you do about it? Stop complaining. Stop talking about the things you can't control. And let's focus on something, however small it is. What can you do to make a difference? And sometimes it's just, on my part, it's just persistence. I won't let them go back to blaming the external. I'm going to make them commit to the thing that they can do to make a difference.
And one way to weed out all the negative Nelly Annies is make them pay. What do you charge for this, and how often are you on the phone with them, or what are the specifics?
There's different ways. The model I like to use is a retainer system. So someone puts me on a retainer for $500 a month plus tax. So it's whatever that works out to be, $500 and let's say $550. Most people will call me twice a month. So every 2 weeks they'll get an hour-long phone call. In between, they'll get email support, and that would be answering questions that follow a particular phone interview. Sometimes it's me giving supporting documents. Someone will lead off with something, and I'll send them an article that relates to it. I'll send them a task that relates to it, a worksheet, something along those lines that are specific to whatever that day's phone call is. So that would be typical. 2 one-hour calls a week, and email in between. Some people get a little busy and they prefer to coach quicker. They only can give up a half an hour, but they might want 3 a month, and that's okay. In the retainer system, it washes out.
Usually, the retainers are mostly only preferred by the orthodontist.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I didn't say all my jokes are funny. Just a few of them, every once in a while. Well, I just think that's so cool because talk about you getting out of your comfort zone. I mean, you're a trained dentist. You go back. I mean, you went to Dalhousie. Is that how you say it?
Dalhousie.
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 And then you went to New Jersey Dental School, and then you decide to pick up and go to Royal Roads University for his certificate in executive coaching. I just think that's cooler than hell. I do that you wanted to do that, and that you're doing it and you're executing it and it's working, and I just think that's cool as hell. So why did you go to the Royal Roads University for executive coaching?
There's a few. Royal Roads is very well known, very well renowned for its program. I didn't know it when I selected it. So it was a highly reputable business school. Coaching comes in a range. I mean, a lot of people when you first say coaching, they say life coaching. So you can get a life coaching certificate in an 8-hour continuing education course. Mine is it can be rolled into the MBA. So I essentially, by doing this certificate, I've completed a third of an MBA at Royal Roads. So that was one of the reasons I chose it. It's a reputable school, which has a really strong business program, and gives me the opportunity to go back and finish this and roll it into an MBA at some point in the future, if I choose to. The program construction was handy too. I mean, it's the opposite coast. So I left from Halifax to go to Vancouver Island in Victoria, BC, to Royal Roads University.
Are you serious?
That's
a 5-hour flight.
Yep. It's going out's not so bad because the time changes work in my favor. It takes me about an hour and a half to fly out and about 9 hours to fly home.
Oh, because the time changes?
Stopovers, because the time changes, right? So you have to add 4 hours on. You subtract 4 hours when you go west, and you have to add those back on when you come back east. And then there's usually a stopover in Toronto along the way too. So spending some time in Toronto Airport.
Wow, that is an amazing commitment.
The great thing is I went out twice. So you go out for the residency at the beginning of the program. It's a 5-day on-site residency, and then I go back and it's webinar based for the rest of the 6 months. And then I have to go back at the end for the final exam and wrap up, final presentations and final exam. So that what they call the blended learning, where it's partially online and partially on site. It's another big reason it made it practically possible for me.
And you completed that?
Yes. Yeah, I finished that.
And do you care if I ask how old you are?
I am 44.
44. You know what? And that's another ingredient of success. One of us should write an article on that. I mean, it seems like so many of the very happy, successful dentists I know, 10, 20 years later out of school, they either went back to school for 2 years and became an endodontist, or they got their MBA, or they got their master's in public health and switched over to the dental school university. And I think so many people think that, well, if you graduate from college at 22 and your degree was in accounting, that you have to be a damn accountant the rest of your life. You know what I mean? And just because you made this decision when you were 18 years old and you did something for 4 years. I mean, I was sitting by this guy in the airplane one time. He was all whining about how he wishes he could have gone back to college and he would have changed his major. And I told him, I said, dude, since you've graduated from college, you could have gone back to school and been a brain surgeon 3 different times.
Right.
Why are you still talking about something that you did 30 years ago? I just love it when I see guys like, and I know so many dentists who just out of nowhere just said, I want to go back and be an endodontist after 25 years, or I want to go teach at the dental school, or I want to be a dean and got their master's. I mean, I just love the fact that you are still evolving your game.
Right. And the interesting thing about that, it took a lot of courage for me to go back to school because of the post-traumatic stress of dental school. I loved going back to business school. I loved the experience, and I can say it was nothing like dental school. I don't think I could do 4 years of dental school again right now. When I see the adult learners, when I was at the university and I saw the adult learners, I don't know how they get the fortitude to be treated the way that dental students are treated. And I was expecting that. I was expecting that workload. I was expecting it to be dental school again. I'll tell you, when I signed up for the course and I got the class list and realized that half of my classmates were CEOs in major corporations, Harvard MBAs in my class, I was so intimidated. And then I went in there, and the learning environment is so different in a well-established adult learning scenario than I was used to. So if anyone is, you're talking to any of these, the 40-year-olds who are thinking about it, my advice to them would be check it out, because school's not necessarily what you remember.
Yeah, and on that dental school, the majority of dental schools do run it like a military Marine boot camp. But then there's alumni from like U of P of, what was that guy's name, the orthodontist, Degoni, or Jack Dillenberg here in Arizona, where they just were treated like humans and they were treated like friends. And so you get U of P, Arizona students, they don't have any of those types of visions. But the majority of dental students feel like they, went and served a year in Afghanistan, then a year in Iraq, and yeah. But you're right, the business school, I thought that was so fun.
Yeah.
I hung out with 200 people for 2 years that just wanted to share cool business stories. It was so damn fun. Well, okay. Well, anything I can do to help you on your career, drkirkblanchard.com. Like I say, I'm a huge fan of, you've been on Dental Town for over 12 years, 7,000 posts. I just think you're an amazing man. I'm so excited about your new journey. I was so excited that you wanted to come on my show and talk about it. Anything you want to do in the magazine or whatever, just anything I can do to help, because at the end of the day, I just want my homies to be happy and healthy. If they'd rather be beaten with a stick than do a root canal, they're called endodontists. You know what I mean? If you're drinking beer on the way to work, there's something wrong at work. You know what I mean? There's just I just want to be happy and healthy. And man, you're going right after the spot, the old brain, the old noodle.
The old noodle.
What are they seeing? Are they seeing it in a funny mirror? Are they blaming it on everybody else? Are they seeing the man in the mirror and then they're trying to get better? And you know what? They just want to try to be better. That's why I think dental consultants work so much, because who's calling them? People who want to improve their business. So you're already qualifying out all the people who don't care or gave up or bad attitude. So consultants, a lot of their success is just natural selection of the person dialing up. It's like, it'd be like a weight loss coach. If people are calling you up because they really want to lose 10 pounds, well, it probably doesn't matter so much about all the different things you're doing, because they're already motivated. So I would think that people calling you already realize they want to self-improve. And I think if you're listening to Kirk right now and you're thinking about a little birdie on your shoulders, follow your intuition. If you want to be better, Kirk's the man. Do you give away your phone or email? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, my email's on. I think you said it already. It's
Kirk at drkirkblanchard.com.
Yep.
All right, buddy. Thank you for all you do for dentistry and for Dental Town. And give that 5-year-old daughter of yours a kiss from Uncle Howie.
All right. Thanks, Howard.